Hello, joining me today is Dr. Sukhdev Thorat, the well-known economist, educationist, author, professor. He's formerly the chairman of the UGC. Currently, he is Professor Emeritus at the Center for Study of Regional Development at JNU, New Delhi. He is considered to be one of the foremost scholars on Ambedkar, his ideas, his writings, etc. Welcome to Keraleeyam, sir.
Thank you.
Welcome to this conversation by Keraleeyam online portal. I am also joined by M Geethanandan, one of the prominent organic intellectuals of our time. Welcome, sir. So let me begin with a broad question, sir. I guess it is in the final address to the Constituent Assembly on November 25, 1949. Ambedkar talked about a paradoxical situation that the newly emerging republic was entering into. On the one hand, we have a constitution which guarantees formal equality, which gives political equality to all of its citizens. On the other, ours is a society which is divided historically, in casteist lines. So it is one of the most, it is a society which is where social and economic inequalities, exist in its most brutal form. What is your take on the Constitution right now? Has the Constitution, failed to address this particular paradox that Ambedkar talked at the dawn of our republic, or is the Constitution, or does the Constitution have the potential to address this paradoxical situation? What is your take on that?
See, the Constitution in the preamble and in the fundamental right recognize that the state will ensure that every citizen get a equal right. Every citizen has a freedom. Every citizen is not, the citizens are not subject to any kind of discrimination based on race, color, caste, gender, origin, ethnicity. So the goals of the constitutions are very clear. And in the directive principle, the state imposes responsibility on the state to develop policies to promote equality, to promote freedom, to promote social justice, reduce wealth inequality, and promote the well-being of the people. So as far as the goals are concerned, the Constitution is in place. But what Dr. Ambedkar also warned was that these are the goals, but in actual society there is an inequality, economic inequality, there is a social inequality, that some of the section in the Indian society do not get equal rights, particularly the untouchables. So in his last lecture he said that we have given right to vote, but we have not given one value, one person. And the economic inequality and the social inequality might not ensure the political right that has been given. So that contradiction everybody was clear, and Dr. Ambedkar, he warned about them that you must strive hard to create economic equality and social equality so that what is guaranteed in the fundamental right is ensured. Now I think over a period of 75 years there has been an improvement. Certainly there has been improvement. The democracy has matured. The nationhood concept has been matured. People have become more aware. People have begun to take interest in election and sending their right representative to the assembly and the parliament. So the democratic ethos and democracy in the formal sense has matured and grown. But as Dr. Ambedkar said and Dr. Manmohan Singh also said that what we are doing, ours is a working democracy. We are moving toward the perfect democracy. So those challenges are still there. Obviously, the challenges of contradiction between the constitution and the actual practice in the society, they may be in a reduced form, but they are there and they have to be dealt with as a matter of fact. But unfortunately, for last 10 years or so, the warning that Dr. Ambedkar has given, particularly in the communal deadlock and way to solve it, or even his last lecture, that the communal base to the democracy should be avoided.
Yeah.
The majority should be based on it should be political majority, which is based on ideology and principles, and not on the basis of the total strength of the caste and the religion. But for the last 10 years, there has been an attempt to give the religious base to the democracy, electoral process. And to that extent, we have taken the democratic advances in a backward direction. Communal democracy has become more prominent now, instead of secular democracy and democracy based on election based on principles.
So given this background of this backsliding of democracy, what's your take on the recent Supreme Court judgment on the sub-categorization of reservation?
I think the problem of inequality within the scheduled caste is a genuine problem. And some of the subcastes within the scheduled caste, those who are backward, most backward compared to other subcastes, their problem need to be addressed. But we do not have a sufficient data as to why those subcastes are most backward, why are they most backward, what are the reasons. So I think we must find out the reason for some of the group lagging behind.
So your suggestion is that even without any empirical data, the Supreme Court has operated with certain assumptions regarding.
Yeah, I think the Supreme Court has recommended the sub-categorization firstly on the legal ground, and secondly on some of the studies which say that there is a inequality within the scheduled caste, heterogeneity within the scheduled caste, and that heterogeneity demand that some of the most backward castes should be given reservation. But I think the evidence provided by the Chief Justice is in the discrimination within the scheduled caste based on social consideration, interdining, intermarriages, another culture. They should have given a evidence of inequality which cause underrepresentation of this community in the government services. And the underrepresentation in the government services is because they lack economic strength to take education. And if you don't have a higher level education, then your employability chances are less in government job. So Chief Justice drawing the evidence is not adequate enough. He did not develop.
It's not convincing.
He did not collect the information of inequality in the economic sphere and educational sphere which caused the underrepresentation. So it's a weak argument, it's a weak evidence. He has stretched it just to justify it. In my view, that there is a reservation for all the subcaste, but some of the subcaste lag behind, perhaps to the extent they lag behind because their educational level is low, their economic strength is weak. And if economic strength is weak, your education level is low, your employability in the government service is low. So what one has to focus more is on their economic strengthening and educational strengthening, which will improve their capability to get the government job. Some preference can also be given. But without addressing their economic situation and educational situation and giving the quotas, will not remove the inter-subcaste disparities. To bring the subcaste on par with each other, what is called, Chief Justice called substantive equality, You require continuing reservation, but you require economic and educational empowerment of the individual, which are lacking behind.
Okay.
This is a better alternative than the subcaste reservation.
You have written recent article in Outlook where I stated that the Supreme Court, in Supreme Court judgment, there is an academic lack, academic approach, or there is not a serious academic research. Could you elaborate on that, considering the viewpoint of Dr. Ambedkar on that heterogeneity versus homogeneity?
So, Dr. Ambedkar brought this caste, lower caste, into a one category for the first time.
So that is, one could argue that that is part of the constitution as well, that approach of treating untouchables as a homogeneous group.
No, right from 1920, the untouchables issue was not on a national scene. Although some statements were made by Congress. It is Dr. Ambedkar recognized this community and identified their common problem. And that common problem was untouchability. So all those whose caste which suffered from untouchability were called depressed classes and later on the scheduled caste. So he gave them the identity, and their problem is because of the untouchability, which involved denial of equal right in social, religious and economic sphere. And he argued that they need legal protection and they need reservation also to get a fair share. But he also recognized that there are individuals within the subcaste which have low economic base and low education. So he suggested economic empowerment and education empowerment of those individuals within the subcaste so that they can make use of the reservation. So Dr. Ambedkar has a dual policy to address this issue. So Ambedkar's solution is better than the solution suggested by Chief Justice of India. Ambedkar never recommended this reservation within the subcaste. He advocated reservation for the untouchable caste, which include all several subcastes.
So such an approach to the constitution, is it not tinkering with the constitution, the kind of judgment that has come recently? Because the group from Ambedkar onwards, scheduled castes have been seen as a homogeneous group because of this problem of untouchability.
See, the argument is that if the scheduled castes are heterogeneous and there is inequality within the scheduled caste, then you can say that there is a case for sub-categorization and the reservation. The constitutions recognize scheduled caste. Now, there are cases which say that it is homogeneous, there are cases which say that it is heterogeneous. Where do we put our priority? In my view, it's a legal mess. There cannot be such a varying decisions on one issue whether scheduled caste is homogeneous or the heterogeneous. Chandrachud brought an additional academic support in favor of heterogeneity, but that was very weak support. The factor that caused the underrepresentation, that he did not mention, only social. So I think the legally we are in a very bad state of affairs.
You also
constitutional generally provide a provision that those who are socially and educationally backward, they should be developed to have an adequate representation. But they haven't mentioned the subcaste. These are all later extension.
So in your recent article, the Outlook article, you talked about the dual policy solution, which Ambedkar proposed, where the group is considered to be the recipient of reservation, whereas the individual is at the center of developmental policies, etc. Could you please elaborate on that?
No, that is, the point is that the reservation policy give 16% reservation in public post, and the qualified, whatever the minimum qualification is decided by the government for all the posts, the qualified can get into those posts. Now, but then the qualified candidate and this depend on your education level of the community, subcaste. Now, some of the individual within the subcaste lack education, therefore they are not equally qualified and they don't get representation. So Dr. Ambedkar idea was that reservation should be given, every subcaste is covered, all the individuals in the subcaste are covered. But those individuals within the subcaste who lacks economic strength, as a result lack economic educational development, as a result they are underprepared for the government position, they should be economically and educationally empowered so that their capability increase and they can make use of reservation. Doctor, in Ambedkar thinking that if we give some preference to some group, it will be okay. But I don't think he has ever talked about the sub-categorization and the reservation within the scheduled caste. Because in a way that's an uniform group. Everybody suffers from untouchability. But they differ with respect to the ownership of asset and education level. There the focus has to be there. That is why economic empowerment and educational empowerment policy for the individual within the subcaste and the group-based reservation policy for all the subcaste. This is the dual policy that he has suggested.
So how do we address this legal mess that we are right now in?
Yeah.
The legal mess as you have just put it.
I do not know. Legally, that is the practice in the Supreme Court, that on the same issue, different bench have different decision. Now this bench has given a decision that scheduled caste is heterogeneous, it can subclassify, reservation can be given. That's what the legal opinion of Chief Justice is. So it is your view against my view. What can we say? But I focus on the academic argument that he has given, which has a serious limitation. There I think he is not justified. Had he collected the study which talks about the economic inequality and educational inequality and economic and education discrimination by one subcaste of the other, then there would have been a case. But that he has not done. Underrepresentation is the outcome of the lack of education. And lack of education is the outcome of poor economic situation of the household and also the lack of government policy. It is not because that the two subcastes are following, not getting intercaste marriages or not meeting as frequently or not allowing in temple. It is because of hardcore economic and educational indicator, backwardness, which he has not brought in.
One of the views of the 4 judges, there is a creamy layer in scheduled caste. Could we explain on the basis of data or empirical data whether there is or not?
Yeah, see the creamy layer is I don't like that word, it's a very vulgar word.
The word itself is
what we can say that we can have economically better of scheduled caste and economically weaker scheduled caste and the economic scheduled caste which are in the middle. Now over a period of time, because of the reservation policy and other forces in the private sector, there has been a mobility among the scheduled caste, and as a result you have an economically somewhat better of class, which may not be as better as that of high caste, but better of class and economically weaker class. Now the Supreme Court judgment and one of the advisory is that now that economically better of class has emerged among the scheduled caste, that class should be excluded from the reservation, because now they can progress on their own. They can walk hand to hand, shoulder to shoulder with the high caste, and they should be taken out from reservation. There is another argument is that you should have, by that token, you should have economic criteria. Only give reservation to those who are economically poor. So both the economic argument of economic criteria and argument of creamy layer are the same argument. In my view, I think this is also not based on a very mature understanding of the situation. See, affirmative action policy or reservations are given to only those communities which are discriminated communities. And their deprivation is because of discrimination based on caste, gender, race, color. Now, which means that the discrimination is not based on economic standing of the person, it is based on his caste. Now, when you are saying that take out the economically better off from the scheduled caste, and if you have to ask a question that whether they should be taken out or not, depend whether they continue to face discrimination despite their somewhat economically better situation. Now, as I say, that theoretically speaking, the discrimination is neutral to the economic standing. Even economically better off also face discrimination, and there is enough evidence to show that economically better off also face discrimination in employment. Now, if that is the case, then you have to provide some protection to the economically better off. Legal protection is there, but you have to protect. You have to give protection by giving them the chances of fair share, and that is only the reservation. So, I don't think there is a case for economically better off class taking out for reservation. What can be done is that some of the subsidies and some of the economic facilities that government provide to the economically better class, which they can afford, that can be withdrawn.
The posts SC/ST people are holding are lower posts. Lower post means
C and D category.
C and D category.
No. That is the other argument. That is Pankaj Mittal, Justice Pankaj Mittal's argument that the entire post have been cornered by the economically better off among the scheduled caste.
You are countering that argument.
Yeah. Poor have been misused. That is completely based on without any facts. On the contrary, reservation has benefited more the economically weaker section. And I have given, we can give the statistic that almost 75 to 80% of the post which the scheduled caste occupy under reservation are C and D, lower category of post. And if you see their education level, they are higher secondary or graduate. So they are essentially economically worse off scheduled caste who have benefited quite a large. Only 11 to 20% post are A and
are weaker persons in SC community.
Yeah. So reservation policy is a pro-poor policy in fact. And so to say that the reservation has been cornered by economically better off is completely baseless.
In the Q&A session, towards the end of your talk, you talked about Dr. Sanal Mohan's work, Modernity of Slavery, and you came up with this idea of reparation, compensation for the historical injustice meted out to Dalit people, the slavery and all those questions. So how is it practiced in other parts of the world? Could you please elaborate on this concept?
No, reparation and compensation is based on the philosophy that if some group benefit at the cost of the other by exploiting, then there has to be reparation or compensation. For example, slavery, American slavery, the black were slave and they were underpaid and overworked. So the wealth of the white has come at the cost of the labor of the black. And when the slavery is gone, there was a demand that you have accumulated your wealth at the effort of the black, they should be compensated for the loss of the wage income that they have gained. So the argument, the philosophical argument is this, that they should be paid back and given compensation for the losses that you incur. This is one black slavery, but also the Jews were given compensation because their property were destroyed in Germany. So Germany gave a huge compensation to the surviving member of those families. Japanese were given compensation by the US government. You know, when Pearl Harbor was attacked by Japan, and the US government thought that the Japanese in USA are not as patriotic as, so they were all arrested and put into a sort of concentration camp. But later on they realized that no, they were nationalists and they were loyal, so they were given compensation of $25,000 per person. So there are several cases of compensation when somebody benefit at the cost of the other. Now in India, the untouchable, the high caste benefit at the cost of the untouchable. The untouchable were denied right to property, and that right to property was monopolized by the high caste. The untouchable were denied right to education. Right to education was monopolized by the Brahmin and the high caste. So the landlessness and illiteracy among the scheduled castes is there simply because it was denied by the high caste, and high caste benefited at their cost. And through intergeneration transfer, the present youth also benefited. But the recent evidence by Sanal Mohan, his book on untouchable slavery in Kerala, brings out the fact that the untouchable were the untouchable caste, slave caste in Kerala.
Yeah.
Pariyar, and they were the slave. Slave means what? You are a property of the owner. You can be sold, you can be purchased, you have no freedom. And then they were required to overwork, and they were paid lower wages, they were exploited, psychological harm, families were divided and sold. So there is a clear evidence in Kerala, and also then later on the South Indian slavery, Kerala and Tamil Nadu and part of Andhra Pradesh, there is evidence of untouchable slavery, but this 1801 Law Commission report mentioned that this is the situation everywhere in India. Untouchables are like a slave caste. Now, if that is the case, then there is a case for the untouchable in Kerala for compensation and reparation. The high caste have benefited at the cost of the slave labor of the Pariya, and they are landless, they are less literate, they are backward simply because the high caste benefited. So, if you benefited at the cost of the other, you have to pay back. So, there is a very solid case for the compensation for the untouchable in Kerala on account of slavery. They should be given land, they should be given support for education.
In Kerala, majority of the nearly 80% of the scheduled tribes are residing in labor camps like colonies, settlements. It is because it is the result of land reform that had been carried out in Kerala during 1970. They were not at all considered for resettlement or as cultivators. They got only 3 cents of land, 5 cents of land, that's all. So, all the people and the next generation, this is the third generation after 1970s Land Reform Act, they are all put in
ghetto-like situations.
Ghetto-like situations. Nearly 50,000 settlements must be there, both scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. According to the government statistics, it is there are 12,000 SC settlements, 8,000 scheduled tribe. Then other Lechambeedu colonies are there. In plantation sector, they are called Layam, what is called, I don't know. Anyway, in total, there is nearly 500,000 such ghettos in Kerala. And the majority of the cultivating land is with the estates like Harrison, Tata. The land Land Reform Act was not touch this
big corporates,
corporate sector. That's the real sector. But in Kerala, the social indicators are showed in
a different
law
light,
belly, and it is very progressive. That's the thing.
Yeah.
That is a stark reality in Kerala. That is why from colonies we don't have any employees, government employees or educated employees, not at all. We have only 1% government employees from Kerala out of the total community. Only 1%. They are working only in services.
Oh, that's very sad. There has to be a policy for them, a special policy for these people, for promotion of education. So
I was linking that question. Your apparition slogan should be connected with this. That's why.
Yeah, of course. As long as they suffer from slavery,
Right.
And also they suffer from untouchability.
To emergency period, 1976, when Indira Gandhi's 11-year program was there, there is bonded labor in Kerala.
Yeah, but
The system was abolished.
yes, she brought the Bonded Labor Act in 1976. Yeah, slavery was gone, but bonded labor was there. Bonded labor, attached labor, forced
That is
labor.
prevailing in Kerala.
So, is there any philosophically sound statistical method to calculate the reparation?
Oh yes, that's a very interesting question. My son Amit Thorat has made some estimations how much the compensation would be. It is very difficult, but you can take, for example, for Kerala, you can take the number of landless scheduled caste and landless scheduled tribe who were slave,
The value has to be
or a marginal farmer among the
calculated.
scheduled caste. And if you give them the 10 acre of land or 5 acre of land, you can calculate the amount of land that can be given to the public land.
The technological know-how.
And also you take the literacy rate, if the education level is low literacy rate, so you can develop the educational support plan for a longer period of time for the educational development of the children of this. The distribution of land will be one-time measure, unlike the reservation. Reservation is continuous, but reparation is one-time measure, which brings a complete economic change. If you give 5 acres of land to each of the scheduled caste person, their economic problem will be solved, and the scholarship and financial support to the children for education will improve education. This is under reparation.
What do you think about the higher education scenario in India right now? Especially with
higher education has expanded quite a lot, you know. We had 70 colleges, 700 colleges in 1960. Now we have more than 45,000 colleges. We have now close to 2,000 universities. Enrollment ratio was only 1% at higher education level. Now it is about 26%, and it is much higher in Kerala. So the education has of course expanded quite a lot. But there are inequalities. The major problem in higher education and school education is that there are inequality across the caste. The scheduled caste and scheduled tribes still lag behind in the access to education. If we look at the recent figure, the scheduled caste enrollment ratio in higher education is 41%. Tribal is less than that, compared to high caste, which is about 79%. So you see the disparity. OBC stand in between.
Yeah.
So, and this privatization has made the education very expensive for the poor classes. So the inequality between the social group, between the caste and tribe, and inequality between the lower and higher income group is a major problem of higher education in India. Quality is of course is also an issue, but I think inequality is at the crux. And in India, our enrollment ratio at all India level is 26%. At this level, you know, they have introduced a big privatization, which is reducing the access of the poor. They should increase the public education system, more of public colleges, more of private aided colleges which are similar to public colleges, more of public universities, more of public standalone institutions like IITs.
Yeah.
But now, since 1991, the move towards privatization is very rapid. So I think the crisis situation is that of unequal access to the higher education and even school education, at secondary and higher secondary. And then the problem has become worse, that poorer learn in the local medium language, their mother tongue, and the better off learn in English.
So, in addition to these discriminative practices you have mentioned, in higher education, what I have seen is that, you know, the pedagogical practices as well as curricular framing sometimes has this tendency to exclude certain people from the ambit of education, especially from tribal areas and all that. Have you thought about it?
Access to education is one part of it, unequal access in admission is one part of it, but after having entered into the education institution, they face discrimination, exclusion, humiliation, impolite attitude, which affect their academic standing. So now there is a considerable amount of literature on the discrimination faced by the scheduled caste, particularly in the higher education institution. Significant number of the cases of suicide, you know, are among the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. That is because of prejudicial attitude, discriminatory attitude, instead of favorable attitude, supporting attitude. That's also an issue.
നമുക്ക് ഇന്ന് പ്രൊഫസർ തോറാത്തുമായി കിട്ടിയിരിക്കുന്ന ഈ സന്ദർഭം വളരെ വിലയേറിയതാണ്. അദ്ദേഹം വളരെ പ്രധാനപ്പെട്ട ഒരു സ്പീച്ചിന് ശേഷമാണ് ഞങ്ങളോടൊപ്പം ഈ കേരളീയത്തിന് വേണ്ടിയുള്ള ഇങ്ങനെ ഒരു ഇൻ്റർവ്യൂവിൽ വന്നിരിക്കുന്നത്. എന്തായാലും ഈ കാലികമായ ഒരു വിഷയമാണ്. പട്ടികജാതി പട്ടികവർഗ വിഭാഗങ്ങളെ സംബന്ധിച്ച് ഇന്ത്യയിലെമ്പാടുമുള്ള ദലിത് ആദിവാസി വിഭാഗങ്ങളെ സംബന്ധിച്ച് വളരെ അപകടം പിടിച്ച ഒരു സബ് ക്ലാസിഫിക്കേഷൻ ക്രീമി ലെയർ അടിച്ചേൽപ്പിക്കുന്ന ഒരു സുപ്രീം കോടതി വിധിയുടെ പശ്ചാത്തലത്തിലാണ് ഇങ്ങനൊരു ചർച്ച വന്നിരിക്കുന്നത്. അദ്ദേഹം ഈ ചർച്ചയിൽ തുടക്കത്തിൽ തന്നെ പറഞ്ഞതുപോലെ പൊളിറ്റിക്കൽ മെജോറിറ്റി ഇന്ത്യയിലൊരു കമ്മ്യൂണൽ മെജോറിറ്റി ആകുന്ന ഒരു പ്രവണത കഴിഞ്ഞ 10 വർഷമായിട്ടുണ്ട്. ആ നിലയിലാണ് അതിൻ്റെ ഒരു അപകടത്തെ നമ്മൾ തിരിച്ചറിയേണ്ടതെന്ന് തന്നെയാണ് ഈ ചർച്ച സൂചിപ്പിക്കുന്നത്. എന്തായാലും അദ്ദേഹത്തിന് നന്ദി.
Thank you very much. Nice to talk to you. Yeah.